listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal, and this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome.
Ain't got no gas in it. Oh, well, she's recording. Oh, well. We're doing it, dude. We're doing it. We're freaking doing it. Finally. We've been talking about doing this for how long? Years. On and off for years. Yeah, probably a decade or so. Well, I'm Sean. And I'm Nathan, but you'll know me as Sal. And we're starting a podcast, guys. Yeah, so this is Back Pew Convos. Mm-hmm. We picked that name because we kind of, I guess we could sort of envision this being just a conversation that you might hear people kind of whispering in the back pew of a church. Like we're going to be tackling tough questions, things that we've thought about a lot, and things that we suspect that other people are thinking about a lot too, but maybe things that you wouldn't feel comfortable addressing in the church. Things you may whisper in the back, but not address openly. So. Yeah, so I guess our vision for this thing is, we really just want to have kind of intimate, personal conversations about what we acknowledge and admit are sensitive topics. Just kind of wrestle with things, kind of introduce the world to, or invite the world, I guess I should say, to wrestle with these things with us. Now we hope maybe in the future, I just want to, of course we don't know what we're doing. This is the first episode we've ever done. We have no idea what we're doing. So, we'll add some things in the future, change some things. This is a learning experience for us. For sure. But, ultimately I think the heart of this vision is to just have those conversations that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable having. And we're kind of exposing ourselves to those conversations so that people who feel like they don't have anybody to talk to about that do. They're not alone. Right. And I mean, we're not really sure how this is going to play out. Like we've kicked around the idea of having like segments, and we may have, we're for sure going to have a topic that we talk about every week. Not really sure the length of every episode. I suspect it won't be any shorter than 30 minutes or longer than an hour. We tend to get long-winded. Sure, for sure. But no one wants to listen to us talk. Well, honestly, no one wants to listen to us talk, period, probably. But certainly not longer than an hour. So we'll keep it under an hour for sure. But I think the goal for me, and I think that you would agree to this, like the goal for the podcast is really to help other people. We've both been through really hard, processes of deconstruction, for lack of a better word. Right. Some people don't like the term. I don't really know what else to say other than that, Right. But that's what it. Shameless plug. We might talk about that a little bit more in the next episode, but for sure. So if you're interested, stick around. But we've both had a long journey and it was walked. Although we had each other, that's all we had. Right. There's a lot of resources. There's a ton of people, because so many people are doing this now. Right. There's a lot of resources out there for people. There's books, there's courses, there's other podcasts. But I guess I just would like to. I know that those things have helped me. Podcasts have helped me. Right. Through this process, and I guess that if we could help somebody to not give up their faith, right? Over these questions, these hard questions, then that would ultimately be a success for me for this podcast. Is if we could just, even if there was only one person that heard the things that we're talking about and decided, that makes sense, and I don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't have to give up my faith altogether. I can remain Christian. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I'm right there with you on that. For me, I guess in my personal story and journey, it's, it felt really lonely, like you felt like you didn't, when your whole life is based around church and built around church, and you're the one person that's different from the rest, or it feels like you're different from everybody else, then it's a real lonely place to be. So, my goal, I guess, kind of to echo what you just said, is that, we are that friend or that voice or, that person who acknowledges that you're not alone in this journey. You're not out there in the wilderness by yourself. We've been there and we're still there. And you're going to walk through the wilderness with us, as we journey through it. And so, I mean, I guess that ultimately is, right in lockstep with you as far as goals.
Yeah. And I think that that kind of leads into our next sort of next thing we'd want to bring up, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, we created an outline here like real professionals. And so on our outline here, we've titled this trigger warning. I mean, and ultimately, I think that is kind of what we want to do. But it's maybe not proper terminology, just simply because we want to use this as an opportunity to just say, throughout this podcast, we're going to be talking about sensitive topics. I think that's implied in the name of the podcast, but these are things that you wouldn't most people, I would say, I don't want to say you, I don't want to speak for everybody, but most people, right, I don't feel like would be comfortable having these conversations openly in churches or talking to their deacons or pastors or, whoever it may be about these conversations, because they're hard, they're probing at maybe some of the more sensitive topics, especially I know, within a lot of Christianity, beliefs are very sensitive. Yeah. And we may be challenging some beliefs, but the point I guess that we want to make in saying this is that we're not trying to be controversial just for the sake of being controversial. We're not trying to cause trouble. We're simple. These are things that we've wrestled with ourselves, and so we know other people are wrestling with them. There's nothing special about us. Right. If we're having problems and we've wrestled with these things, we know other people are. And so just ignoring them isn't the right approach. The right approach is to actually address these topics and talk them through and look at them and discuss them, and that's what we hope to do through this.
Yeah, and I think that one thing I want to make sure I say is that our pastor is fantastic, actually, and I spent a lot of years not realizing how awesome that he was and how open he would have been to having these discussions. In my own mind, I had created this scenario in which I'm called a heretic and thrown out of the church, and it's I know that's illogical. Now I understand that.
Right. And so, I don't want to give away too much from the next episode, but that's actually a big part of my story, is that I now looking, hindsight's 2020, looking back, I realized that a lot of my loneliness and a lot of my insecurities were just my own fears.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they were based in reality. So,
yeah. And again, just to reiterate, I guess, we understand that not everyone has been through this process that we're talking about. And we're not trying to force anyone into that process. And that's why we want to give this what we've called a trigger warning, is just to say there are going to be some things that we say that may bring up uncomfortable feelings, and you may, I just want to be honest about that. Either we've come through this process and we've thought a lot about these things, but I understand a lot of people have not thought about these things at all, and we want to be sensitive to that.
Right.
So
that's why we're taking this time right now, just to let you know, if that's not something that you're comfortable with, just know ahead of time. But we, again, want to make it clear that we're not trying to be controversial just to be controversial. We're actually wrestling with these things, and we're just inviting you to wrestle with them with us.
Right. I think this might be a good time to read a couple of scriptures, actually. So it's Philippians 2, verse 12 and 13. So then, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, now as in my presence only, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. I read that out of the NASB in case anyone's curious with translation. But that word, the fear and trembling there, it doesn't, I guess I always grew up thinking that meant that you're supposed to like literally be trembling in fear of God.
Right.
And I've come to believe that that's not what he's saying there. I think that, for one, I think that word fear, phobos in the Greek, it can be translated as reverence or respect. And to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for me, would be to approach your beliefs with, or approach the scriptures, perhaps, and just the way that you work out your salvation, approach that with humility and reverence.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that everyone's understanding that, we just want to make it completely clear that whenever we're asking these tough questions and whenever the conclusions that we've come to, we haven't come to them lightly, and we definitely have approached these things with humility and with reverence and respect.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's another point that we wanted to hit on that leads right into it, is that we're just like you listening to this, whoever you are, like, we're just regular guys. We aren't scholars. Neither one of us has been to seminary. We're not pastors. I mean, we do help in our church in any way possible because we, want to help our community and our family.
Right.
But, other than that, I guess the point is we're not professionals at this. We're just two dudes.
Yeah.
Sitting in the back of the church having a conversation.
Couple of silly goose.
Yeah.
Looking for a silly goose.
Is it geese or goose?
It's geese for sure. Couple silly geese looking for a silly goose time.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I think that is important, though, is those two things tie together, I think. The fact that we're coming at this humbly and with reverence,
right,
and that we acknowledge that we're nobody special, that we're not educated, as far as been to seminary or anything.
Right.
Like, we're just people who are real passionate about this stuff and who spend a lot of time reading. I know that you mentioned how podcasts were a big part of your journey, and they were as mine as well.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's something that is really important to me is humility. I just want to acknowledge, and I want to say it right now in the very first episode, that anything that I say on this podcast or, try to express as my current thought or opinion on that subject,
right,
not only did I come to that conclusion through a lot of hard struggle and wrestling and study and prayer and all that, but I come to it humbly, knowing that I don't know everything.
Exactly.
While this is what may make sense, when I say it, that might be what makes sense to me at the time. I acknowledge that I could be wrong.
Right.
I don't want to ever try to project that what I'm saying is gospel truth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that this is what makes sense to me right now.
Right.
It could change tomorrow. I like to think that I'm somebody with an open mind who, could, presented with right evidence, change their mind. I mean,
right. Yeah. And, I guess I just want to make sure that people understand again that it's because we have a deep respect for the scriptures and for God that we're even asking these questions,
right,
and having these thoughts and coming to the conclusions that we're coming to. Because if I didn't care what the Bible said, and I didn't care what people heard when I speak about God, like if I didn't care whenever I speak about who God is, like if I didn't care how that came across to people, I wouldn't be thinking about these things.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean I think that's core to, deconstruction itself is just the desire. I think that's one of the things that's really missed in that is, when people are looking from the outside in, it looks like you're losing your faith or whatever. Like it looks like you don't care anymore. You're not a believer anymore, and it's actually the exact opposite of that.
It's disrespectful.
It's because you care so much that you have to make it make sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I guess we're going to wrap up the intro here.
Yeah, we don't want to ramble on for too long. I mean, for this episode, we just wanted to introduce ourselves, kind of let you guys know what it is that we're hoping to do through this podcast, and just as much for you to know what it is that we're wanting to do. We kind of did it for ourselves too, because we've never done this before, so we're testing things
Right.
out here. But we're going to try to kick out another episode. I mean, I think I've already let the cat out of the bag that we're going to kind of be talking about our personal stories of our faith journey.
Right.
I think we're going to do a deep dive into it.
Yeah.
Starting from childhood to where we are now. For those of you who don't know, we're both in our mid-30s, so we've got a little bit of history to cover there. But
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess if you want to, if you care to, listen to the next episode.
peace.
Thanks, guys.